Well, hello and welcome to Willow Woodworks. My name is Richard, and yes, I'm the one Daniel Hammis talks about on Bearded Viking Woodworks in his live videos. I'm the one who creates the drawings for all of his projects. So if you're interested, follow along with me as I recreate the cross napkin holder that Daniel had done on one of his videos. Let's get started. Okay, so here we are in front of the computer now. When creating one of these parts in order to create or one of these projects, I should say, in order to be able to generate the drawings, I need to create the individual parts of a project. In this case, we're going to be making that napkin holder, the cross napkin holder. So it boils down to I basically need three individual parts. So let's start by making the first part. I'm going to select that I want to create a part. And I can select either the front plane, or the top plane, or the right plane in order to begin designing the part. In this particular case, I'm going to be using the front plane. And I'm going to say I want to create a sketch. Okay? From here, I want to take, and I'm going to draw a line that comes on out. And from here, I'm going to draw a line coming up. And then a line that comes out like this. And then from that point, back down to there. There's the general shape of our part. Okay? But I need to define this thing. So I'm going to put a little construction line right down there. Now I'm going to give this some dimensions. And we want this angle here to be 60 degrees. We also want the width of our part to be 1.25 inches. We also want from our long point to square, we want that to be 7 inches. Okay? So there's the general shape of our part, but that's only a 2D view. So what I want is a 3D part. So I'm going to take and create this. We want our thickness of our part to be 1/2 inch. So there's the thickness of our part. So now we've got the part almost completed. We still need to put a dado cut in this thing. And on this particular part, we want the dado to be on this side. So I'm going to select that face and I'm going to select, I want to create a sketch. I'm going to go normal to that face, and then I'm going to take and create a rectangle here. And I selected the top edge up here and the bottom edge down here, which I see didn't take, but that's all right. I can fix that. We'll get that just like that. Oh, it's still not doing it. What is going on here? It's giving me a little bit of a headache. There we go. The reason I know it wasn't there was because the line was not black. Being black, that means that line is defined as where it's located at. The top one defined by the top edge here, this bottom line defined by the edge down here. You'll notice that the two vertical lines are still blue in color because they are not defined yet. Well, let's take and define how wide our dado is going to be, which should be 1.25 inches. So now we've got that width, but our lines are still blue yet because it's not totally defined. So from the end out here to this edge of the dado, we want that to be 1.25 inches. Now everything is fully defined. At this point now, I'm going to do what they call a cut extrude. So it's going to cut into the part. Now I only want it to cut in half the thickness of the material, which is 1/4 inch. And so there we have it. There's my dado. So we now have this first part created, but it kind of looks kind of bland with it being gray. So let's give it some appearance here. Let's give it some texture. And we'll make it look like a piece of wood. Okay? So now that we have that part created, let's just take and save that part. And we're going to call this vertical cross, because that's the vertical part of our cross that we're going to be making. Okay, so now that we have that saved, we're done with that part. Now we need to create the horizontal part of the cross. Again, I'm going to select my front plane. I'm going to say open a sketch. I want to draw some lines, but I'm going to draw them a little differently this time. I'm going to draw it out this way. And I want an angle down here. So I've got my general shape of everything. But now I need to put in my little construction line up here, so I can use that to define my angle. Now I can measure from that line to here, and I say I want that to be at 30 degrees. Alright, again, we want this to be 1.25 inches. And we want from our square to long, we want that to be 5 inches. Okay? So again, we now have our general shape of the part. Well, we need it to be a 3D view, or a three-dimensional part. So we're now going to make that our 1/2 inch, like we did with the other one. And there we have it. But now we need the dado in this, okay? But our dado for this part is going to be on this side. So I'm going to select that face, open up a sketch, go normal to it. And again, just like I did before, I'm going to put a rectangle in here. We want to define the width of the dado, which is going to be 1.25 inches. And we also want to define from the end to that edge of our dado. I forget how many 16ths that's going to be, but it's going to be 1.6875. So it shifts it over to there. And now, in our 3D view, I'm going to do a cut down into the part. Again, only half the thickness of the material, so 1/4 inch. And there's my dado. Now again, we'll take and give this some texture so that it looks pretty decent. And there we have the horizontal piece of our cross. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and call this a horizontal cross, because that's the horizontal piece of the cross. I missed a little spacer in there. There we go. And so now we have that. Now what we need to do is we need to assemble those pieces that we just created. So I'm going to come up here and say a new file, and I want to create an assembly this time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to use the vertical cross is what I'm going to add in here first. I'm going to add that part in here first. Okay? And I can move this around any way I want. And now I need to insert the horizontal part of the cross. Now it's not exactly positioned the way we need it to be, but that's alright, because I can take and move this over like this a bit, and then say that I want to rotate it a bit like that. Okay? As long as it gets me in the general ballpark of what I want. Now I need to do what they call a mate, where I want this surface of that part to be even with that. As you can see, it just moved the part right down into there. Okay? And I need to do the same thing with this face of the horizontal piece and the inside edge of the dado on the vertical piece. It now moved everything over to there. Now if everything fits right, I can select that face and this face, and it brings everything together. So now there is our cross, which will be eventually positioned somewhat like this. Okay, now I can say, you can save this, and I'm just going to call it cross, because that's what it is. That's our cross. Now what we need is we need the base that we're going to put those crosses on. So now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say I need to select a part, is what I want to create. Before I used the front plane, which left everything flat, straight at me. But now I'm going to use the top plane and say open up a sketch. Okay? And I'm going to use a simple rectangle starting at my origin point. Draw a general rectangle in there, and now I can dimension it. I'm going to want that to be 3.5, and I want the length of this to be 8 inches. Okay? Now I need to extrude this thing, and we're going to extrude it down 3/4 of an inch. And there's my base. Okay? Now again, we want to take and give this some texture as well. Simple and easy enough to do. And there we have it. So now I can take and save this as, I'm going to just simply call it base. And there we now have the base. From here, we're now ready to assemble the base to the cross. So we want to do another assembly. So I'm going to select assembly, and I'm going to take and insert the base first, because that'll be our foundation of everything. We'll get our base put in here, and now I'm going to zoom out just a wee bit here so I can have some room to work, and I'm going to insert the assembly of the cross that I had made. So now there's the cross that we made. But now again, we need to add some what they call mates to this. I want the top face of the base to be even with that surface right there. So you can see it rotates it right down into position for me. Alright. We also want this face of the cross and this face of the base, but right now it's flush. I don't want it flush. I want it offset by 1/8 of an inch. And I can just do that by simply telling it I want it to be a certain dimension, which is going to be 1/8 of an inch. Okay? So now we've got that positioned in there. Now we're not quite done yet, because as you can see, I can move this back and forth. So I need to define the position of that as well. And to do that, I'm going to use the mate feature again, and I'm going to say I want the edge of that point right there to this face to be a certain distance, and I'm going to make it 5/8 of it. Whoops. 5/8 of an inch. And it moves it to that distance. If that looks good, I'm going to leave it there. And to me, that does look good. And there's what we end up with. Now I could go through the same procedure of taking, I could take and put individual pieces of the cross in here and do an assembly that way, or I can just simply say, let's add another assembly of the cross to this to put the other one in, but there's an easier way. All I have to do is I want to say insert a linear pattern. So that all I have to do is select that edge, and you'll notice that there's a little arrow right there that's pointing to the right. So it's going to go off in that direction. And I can now select what distance. Over here on the top left here, I can select the distance, which I want to be 2 3/4 of an inch. And I can also select the quantity. How many of them do I want? Well, in this case, we only need 2 parts on there. And now I can select what component, which is the cross itself, and then just say OK. And there we have it. I've got my 1/8 of an inch reveal that's right there, and there's our cross with our napkin holders. And everything looks pretty cool from there. From here, all I have to do is say save it as, and I'm going to just simply call it cross napkin holder. And say save. And so there you have the assembly of the thing. Okay, now comes the fun part. We still don't have a drawing yet. All we've done is we've recreated the project, but we don't have a drawing. So let's take and create our drawing. Well, instead of a part or an assembly, I'm going to select a drawing, which brings me up a sheet of paper in which I can now insert whatever I want. At this point, I usually like to take and add on the very first page the overall assembly, and I can select whatever type of a geometric shape I might want. I can scale this up. I'm going to make it, let's see, 1.5 I think will do it. And I'm also going to give this thing a little bit of some color so you can see the shape of it. Okay? Or I can even take and just do it this way so it looks like that, so you don't see the hidden lines in the background. Alright, so we'll just leave it like that. Now this provides me with all kinds of information. It has the date on here of which I created this drawing, has the scale of this sheet that's on here, and so on. Well, now that I've got that much, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to take and save this as, and it has my file name in here already of my candle, or napkin holder, candle. Yeah, napkin holder. So I'm just going to say, and it's in the file that I want. So I'm going to say save. So at least I've got that much saved. Now all I have to do is simply say, I want to add a sheet. I want another piece of paper. Okay? So there's my next sheet. Now I'm going to simply take and say, insert the drawing view of the part of our vertical cross piece that we made. And it's showing me the front view, but it shows these 2 vertical lines in here, which I should not be able to see. Those are actually hidden lines, so I can change that type of view. Also going to change the scaling of the view here to that. So I can move this now over, such as like that. And now I need another view, because I want to show the dado that's in there. So now I'm going to say insert the projected view of that. And so there's my projected view of this part. Okay, and I can position these wherever I want, but everything's in alignment. But now I've got plenty enough room here that I can take and insert the drawing view of our model of the horizontal piece of our cross. Put that in there, and I want to use the same sheet scale. So there's our horizontal piece. And again, I want to show the dado that's in there, so I'm going to select the projected view, and there's the projected view. But now this line is actually a hidden line. All I have to do is select that, change the type of setting, and now we've got our dashed line to show that it's a hidden line, which is this line, because this view is the top of this, just like this view up here is the top of this. Okay, I don't need to show an end view because we can already, the only thing the end view is going to show me is the thickness of the part, which I can see the thickness of the part right here. So once I have this much done, all I have to do is say insert the model items, and you can see that it automatically inserts all of my dimensions that I had placed on each of these parts. Okay, now some of the dimensions aren't always positioned just the way I want them to be, so I need to make a few adjustments. That's going to be 1.25 inches as well, so we'll move that up to there. We want to show that that's 1/4 inch deep. I can move that over this side, and this is going to show our thickness of our material to be 1/2 inch, and we've got our 1.25 inches that's out here. And do the same thing with this down here. I've got my 1/4 inch there, 1.25 inches rather, my 1.25 inches here. I've got my 5-inch dimension there. I've got my 1/4 inch dimension here. I can take and move this view up a little bit, give me a little more room, or I could take, probably be easier to take and just move this one down a little bit so they aren't crowding the other view. And I got my 1/2 inch dimension right there for the thickness of our material, and here's our 30-degree angle that's on here. So now we've got all of our parts, and all I have to do now is simply sit back and make an annotation on here of a note and say vertical pieces make 2 pieces. And so there's that, and I can then take and say copy that from there down to here, and then edit the text, take out the word vertical and change that to horizontal, and there we have it. Now I can take and insert a drawing view of the model of just the cross itself. So I want the assembly of just the cross, which I could put in right there. Give it that sort of a view. And I can take and make that to the scale size of the drawing sheet so that you can assemble the parts. Alright. From here, I can take and add another sheet. Alright, so I got another blank sheet. And from here, I insert the model view of our base. And in this case, I want the top view of it. I'm going to change my scaling on this again to 1.5. And then I also need a projected view so I can show the thickness of it. I'm going to put right out there. Insert the model items of that. There's my 3.5 inch dimension, my 8 inches, and my 3/4 inch thickness. I can move this view up a little bit so that it gives me room that I can now insert the drawing view of the assembly of the entire project. And put that right down here. Make that a diametric dimension. Change it to that. Use our sheet scale, and there we have it. And all I have to do now is just convert these into a photo file, and then Daniel can then take and list them on his Etsy site, and we're all set. There's your drawings. The nice thing about this is, let me take and just save all of this for right now. The nice thing about this is the fact that if I were to take and let's say just the vertical part, okay, there's our vertical piece right there. Now we originally made the overall length of this 7 inches. Well, I can edit this thing, and let's take and change that to, let's say, 7.5 inches. My angle here still remains the same. The width of our part still remains the same, and my thickness still remains the same. So if I take and save that, now when I open up the assembly of the cross itself, it's going to ask me if I want to update it, and it does update it. So it now makes, because I can dimension this and show that that is now 7.5 inches long instead of 7 inches. Okay, and what does that do to our assembly of the napkin holder itself? Well, you're about to see. You can see that it just extended this up that extra length, and so we now have this gap that's down here. So once I have the parts made, I can edit the parts and change the overall size of the entire project without having to recreate the entire part. All I have to do is change the dimensions, and I've already got the part. So I can go back here now to my vertical cross, change this dimension back to our 7 inches. Say save that. And now when I close it, it puts everything right back to normal again. And then when I close that, it's going to want me to update this, and I'm going to say yes, take and update that. But at the same time, on the drawing sheet, when it comes to this vertical part, it's also, when I change that to 7.5 inches, it's going to automatically change this to 7.5 inches as well. That's part of the nice thing about this program, is that I can make one part and make it to be multiple pieces all in one. So hopefully this has helped anybody. It gave you some idea of, the process that I go through to be able to create these drawings. And hey, here's how I do it. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And so now it's time for you guys to get out there and make some sawdust and have some fun doing it. Catch you all later. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope it was educational maybe for a few other people. Please hit that like button and share if you'd like. And please leave a comment if you have any suggestions of maybe how I could possibly do anything a little bit better, or make things a little bit more clearer to some people. I know that some people like to see fractional dimensions instead of decimal dimensions. That can be done as well, but it doesn't give me the accuracy of what is really needed. So, but leave a comment anyways. I'd be happy to read any and all comments. So, hope you all enjoyed. Have fun, make some sawdust, and we'll catch you all later.